All right, good morning. Morning, hear me? Okay. Good morning, it's Kevin Wyant from SPAR. Thanks for coming this morning. Got about 35 minutes. We're going to have a really jam-packed, concise, but very interactive panel. How we're going to approach this is take about 20, 25 minutes of moderated Q&A. So we have some good questions queued up to go through the landscape, and then open it up to questions for the last 10, 15 minutes. So get those questions ready when the time comes. We're going to start by going right down the line, have each one of the panelists tell us who they are, who the company is, and briefly what you do in the mobile advertising space. So Ed, why don't you kick off?
Sure. So, my name's Ed Montez. I'm the CEO of a company called Digilent. Digilent's a Boston-based company. Been in business since around 2009. And our goal is to help our brands and agencies that we work with do better advertising. And the way we do that is by developing technologies and delivering services that result in better advertising. And we deliver that tech and those services in mobile, display, and video, and to a lesser degree, social today.
Victor, go ahead.
And I'm Victor Milligan. I'm Chief Marketing Officer for NextAge. We are a mobile ad exchange, and our goal in life is to make this market grow with a lot of value, to create a very efficient, productive, liquid, and vibrant market for all the participants, Weather and others included, and everyone in this room.
And I'm Grant Stratemeyer. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Celtra. We're the leading mobile rich media platform. So we do all the mobile rich media. So it's the creative that runs across the mobile ecosystem.
All right, that's the introduction. So the title of the panel is Demystifying Mobile Advertising. So we're going to start right off with Ed. Now, what is mobile advertising, and how's it going to differ from other digital advertising?
Yeah, so let me try and answer that in two ways. One is what I think the marketer's expectation of mobile advertising is, and then what I think the sort of the trend towards mobile advertising, or sort of the vision for mobile advertising should be, or at least maybe how we look at it, or how I look at it. So when I speak with marketers, and just to sort of lay the groundwork, it's a fairly global view. We have about 1,200 individual brand clients around the world. I think when they talk about mobile advertising, what they're talking about is the ability to communicate with the consumer on a mobile device. And I think it's becoming harder for them to understand or to interpret what a mobile device is. I think that's the sort of the very simple challenge that they face today. But when I think about mobile advertising, where I think the potential for mobile advertising is, and why I think most of us are in this room, is the realization that traditionally markets, or I should say marketing, has been divided into channels. So even the digital channel, if you will, has been divided amongst search, social, display, mobile, video, right? And you can, even when I set up, hey, how do we deliver our services, I start talking about these channels. And the reality is that in the future, what we consider mobile today, from a targeting perspective at least, from a consumption perspective, is going to encompass all of those channels, right? So the distribution of content is going to be 100% mobile, and all of the technologies that all the great companies in this room are working on today are going to be 100% of the media mix in the future. And I think that is the challenge, and I think that is the opportunity.
Victor, Grant, any other comments?
Yeah, I'll start with what it's not. So I think a lot of people hoped that mobile was just going to be an extension of digital. And there's one key point, and Cameron made mention of it earlier today, which is the lack of a third-party cookie. And it alters the targeting environment significantly. You start there, then you go to the fact that mobile has different platforms, different form factors. And I think part of what we have to work through is not just sort of bemoaning that mobile's different, but sort of understanding what it is and taking more of a native approach. Still sort of understanding you can do cross-platform this or that, but you still have to optimize within the context of mobile. And it's extraordinarily doable. It's just different. And it's different in those two key pieces, which is, I think the gentleman here asked the question on the two pieces, which is the ad unit type and the nature of targeting. And so I think we'll explore this in these 35 minutes, but those are the two pieces that I think everyone has to get their head around. It's a change program. It's different. It doesn't make it better or worse. It's just different, but that's where the consumers are at this point in time.
Yeah, and in our world, from a rich media perspective, it's I always like to put, like, everything you can do from a digital advertising, from a rich media is on display, is now a reality for mobile, right? You can do mobile rich media, but this isn't just a recreate a flash, right? We're designing the rich media creative for the devices, right? So there's the accelerometer. So if you shake the device, you can change certain events. There's interacting with the screen. So flipping through a photo gallery. But we can do the location-based things, and we're integrating with firms like a Shop Local, so you can do a mobile circular and do targeted advertising and integrated experiences based off where that device. I mean, we're always that device is carried with us everywhere. And you look at, Cameron mentioned that the time spent within on mobile is greater than time watching TV. So that that's the opportunity, and that's from an advertising perspective. We're designing and building a rich media creative, that the brands can really take the right message to the consumers, but it's designed for the devices that they're on, that phones and or a tablet device.
Great. So we talked about what mobile advertising is, but some people still think it's hard. So, Grant, why do people think it's hard? And then what's the industry doing to make it easier?
Yeah, and again, kind of following Cameron's thing, it's 300 Android handsets, right? So you look at that, like, how am I going to, you're a creative person, you're a media buyer, how am I going to build something that's going to reach that audience, right? We see it's a two-horse race. It's an iOS and Android marketplace. I mean, that's the dominant smartphone market that is out there right now. And you look at all the different devices. You look at, there's apps, right? There's in-app, so there's Shazam, Pandora, the Weather Channel app, etc. Then you have mobile web. There's 70% of the sites that are delivered out there are non-mobile optimized sites. So from a brand perspective, it's like, how am I going to build something that's going to reach that audience, right? And then second, it's the trafficking, right? So there's multiple SDKs. It's a little bit of the wild, wild west still, all right? So there's no standardization yet on how to deliver rich media. So there's a whole nother set of ad serving vendors out there. So on traditional display, there was DFP, right? They owned 90% of the entertainment ad serving platform. So now for mobile, there's AdMarvel, there's Motion. DFP is now starting to pick up. So there's a whole nother cast of characters that they have to work with, and so there's trafficking. You have to send multiple tags. Before it was just send one tag, it could go everywhere. In mobile, it's multiple. So it's in-app, there's mobile web, and that's what we've done from Seltra, from a perspective, is try to solve that challenge, right? So make it easy to build one creative and get unified reporting and make it easy to run across that mobile ecosystem. So that's the kind of, we see it as some of the biggest challenges is educating that the consumers and the brands and the agencies out there. I mean, half of my meetings are educational. It's educating people on what the possibilities are.
Ed, Victor?
Yeah, it's kind of paradoxical, which is, if there is ever a medium which everyone in this room is fully embracing, it's mobile. In other words, if there is a medium that I would say is easy to change to, it would be mobile. We're all headlong into it. So I think part of it is it's different enough, and I'd start there because that's a comment about who owns the budget, who's the boss, how does it work, where are your comfort levels, there's a sort of emotion change management piece of this that just makes it hard. The other is, and this is a comment about the mobile industry, is talk about a massive tailwind. You have this massive, gigantic consumer shift to all things mobile, and it just made the market sort of hum. And it made, personally, I think it was sort of a self-inflicted wound. We really weren't careful enough building the right kind of ecosystem. It was not frictionless. It was not easy. We made things hard. We had a lot of hype. And I think now we're sort of reorganizing ourselves a bit to say, well, wait a minute, we have to build an industry, an ecosystem that takes away this complexity, makes it sort of neutral to everybody. You guys can build a targeting environment with data, real data, and good data. You guys can use different ad units, and we'll express them to you. We'll build the creatives as Grant's firm is doing. So I think part of what we have to do is sort of get past the idea there's tailwinds and really build something that makes it easier for everyone to engage it, because you all know it's there, and you all know it is odd. Everyone has said that people won't play games on mobile, and they dive in, and old people can't read mobile, and I read mobile. I'm old, and so the consumers always defied the odds. So we know the ad units don't have to be equivalent to TV. They just have to be good. So I think a lot of it is mobile we have to get past the emotional part, and the ecosystem has to be in place to build the value that's available to the publishers and to the agencies and advertisers.
My take is, and I think it sort of touched upon the comments as these guys made, and it was made by the Weather Company earlier, it's a process that's full of friction right now. Friction sucks value out of sort of the profitability of any type of selling and delivering equation. If you have holding companies, and it's the Weather Channel said this, not me, that are telling their clients or ordering their agencies not to buy mobile because there's so much friction, because it's unprofitable, you have a barrier to adoption. So however we remove the friction in the purchase of mobile and in the delivery of mobile, that will unlock the value, and that will make it easier.
Great. So Cameron talked a lot about data in the previous session. So Victor, what are some of the data and metrics which can be collected, and what are some of the collection issues today?
I'll separate by sort of first party and third party just for a second. So we're an exchange. We actually get a wealth of first party data from our publishers, and that could be demographic, registration data. And I'll just focus on location because I think it's the easiest thing to talk about and imagine. So we get location data in different parameters. We get it in lat long, we get it in zip code, city, state, and others. And it's highly valuable for those that are building local and hyperlocal campaigns. And then out pops this concern that lat long is crap, that it's actually IPS derived, it's not really has fidelity, there's really little accuracy. And what happens is the media's grabbed hold of this, and now lat long has gone from it's good to it's crap. And I'll speak a little bit about NextStage, what we're doing about it, because I think it's important. How to create certainty in the data, not just the availability of it, but the certainty. So if you're going to price it, you're pricing it the right way. If you're going to target on it from a geofencing perspective, it is accurate. So we have a business control that allows us to understand whether that lat long that comes into us is derived, meaning it's not really lat long, or it's real. It is lat long. And we do that because the buyers like Ed's organization and the agencies, they need certainty in that data. Second is the ability to bring third-party data in, and there's value to it. It is very well known how to use it in the digital space. So we built NextStage Connect, which allows us to integrate at the exchange level all this different third-party data so that we have both the precision and the richness of data. It is not equivalent to digital at this point in time. It's different and arguably maybe lesser, but it's growing very rapidly. It's becoming much more of a precise and rich environment for data and targeting. And I think that's, again, we just have to continue to build and focus on this, focus on the quality of the data as well as the richness of the data.
Brandon?
No, I mean, I think Victor did a good job describing sort of some of the challenges and types of data that are available. What I would just sort of caution or suggest is that it's not going to be a single data point. It's going to be a massive collection of data points that allow us to sort of replicate or improve upon or mature the targeting that's available in mobile. And it's going to take significant data capabilities to do this. I'm sure there'll be companies who pop up or who are rising to suggest or develop solutions to make that easier. But mobile is rich in data points. Location is a rich data point, and I think it's going to be a multivariable or multifactorial type of solution. It's not going to be it's not going to be as we perceive it to be today in the third-party data cookie-based world that we see in display.
And look, we see data in a different light, right? So we're the creative. So we leverage data that we get from publishers and the exchanges, et cetera. So it allows you to take location or weather-based data to do dynamic creative. So we see data in two aspects, right? So it's the dynamic creative, right? So it can be location-based creative that will, like what we've done with Shop Local, right? So do a mobile circular so you can see what's on sale at the Kohl's store down your street, or do a weather integrated feed so you can integrate weather within the rich media creative. So we know it's raining in Boston, you can wipe away the rain on the screen and reveal what it's we did this for the Weather Channel for the West End, so we know it's raining in Boston or snowing, wipe away the snow. And here's what the weather is like at the West End in the Bahamas, right? So really to give the real time, not only the time, but the weather that's in the Bahamas. And then we look at data for for the experience within the creative, right? So what was the time spent? What was the video completion rate? How long are people interacting with your creative? So you can really track the engagement and the performance of that and leverage that data so you can make decisions on how to make that creative perform better over the course of the media buy.
Right. So what about the brands? The brands are an important part of the equation. What are they doing today? And where do you see them going in the future in this mobile advertising world?
We saw, it was interesting, there's a lot of forecasts for when the brands are coming in, and I'm sure the brands all talk to each other about when they're coming in. A little bit to Cameron's earlier point, we do see certain verticals and certain brands have sort of come in. They've understood that there's limitations in mobile. They'll accept those limitations, but the opportunity well exceeds the barriers. You're just using an example, which we measured in our exchange. The Super Bowl is a big brand day, whether it's second screen or third screen or however you think of mobile in the context of the Super Bowl. And last year, 2012, we had an 18% daily uptick in ads served. And this year, we had an 180% uptick. It was a gigantic surge. And we looked hard at it, and the brands were really beginning to experiment with how to do integrated campaigns. And it was a really nice example of them taking an event and really starting to get the training wheels off the bike and look hard about what the opportunity is. Different forecasts are out there, and I know there's a lot of agencies representing brands in this room. And this is a little bit more of a consulting opportunity than necessarily just they're thirsty for it. Is you have to sort of guide them through the wickets of how to take advantage of mobile and guide them through the simple balancing act of the opportunity well exceeds the limitations, and work with folks like Ed or myself and Grant, which is to give them comfort that there's serious people working really hard to make this ecosystem a lot less fraught with things that are just gapped, and sort of building an environment that creates the right value for that brand, because the consumers are certainly there.
Yeah, and Super Bowl is a great example. I mean, when I first started Seltzer 2 years ago, the innovators are still the innovators of today, right? So it's financial services, it's entertainment, it's auto, are still continue to be the big spenders. But the differences between then and now is that we're seeing it spend across every vertical. It's QSR, it's CPG, it's retail. Walmart is putting so much money into mobile. So same with Target. Now you're seeing RFPs for $1 million media plan just for mobile. That wasn't there 2 years ago. So, we want the money to come faster. I think it is accelerated. But brands, are being really smart. Most of the campaigns we see are in conjunction with what they're doing in social. So they're doing a media buy, but they're also taking that same placement and working with Facebook, doing stuff with Twitter. So they're leveraging a unique creative across the board. They're leveraging video. So it's definitely they're being smart about how they're doing their buying and leveraging mobile. Just not for just a media placement on weather or through an ad network, but also leveraging all the different social aspects so they can really extend that media buy because they know that's where their users are engaging with their content.
My experience is that sort of the most innovative brands or the most forward-thinking brands aren't considering it mobile anymore, right? And retailers are a good example of this in that they are using the mobile device, and quite honestly, it's replacing out-of-home. It's replacing, or not replacing, but it's additive to out-of-home, or it's being considered part of the out-of-home mix. It's being considered part of the circular mix. And so what I really believe that they've made the leap to consider this is the usage pattern that we're seeing, and it's not so much considered the media delivery vehicle anymore as much as it is the utility delivery vehicle. And I think those guys are way ahead of it, and it's largely based on data and not on channel anymore.
It's an interesting point that just was raised because there was this concept that existed for a while that mobile was additive. In other words, the consumption habits on your computer would sort of stay. And then on top of that would sit mobile. And that was comfortable because that meant that what you're doing in digital was fine. It was sustainable. And now we have a new concept, which is substitution. And that's harder. Meaning digital consumption is going to change directly because of mobile. Mobile is beginning to substitute it. So if you're a brand or agency out there, it's not just digital is fine and going to stay healthy throughout the whole process. Is that watch out for mobile, here it comes. And we talked, Cameron mentioned the word fear. And fear is a funny thing. I'm afraid of a lot of things, so I'm well aware of fear. But there was this concept of I don't want to be first, because first means I make all the mistakes and people learn from me. I may lose my job. And now the new concept is I don't want to be last. What if I'm the last person and I'm hanging on to digital and the substitution patterns are in place and I get it last? I become expert last. I don't have anyone on my team who understands mobile. I don't really understand the landscape. So I really do encourage you guys to, this is a substitution play that's going on right now. It's not simply additive.
Yeah, that's a totally great point. I mean, you're seeing the dip happen for just PC consumption and mobile rise, and you're totally right. I mean, we see that as well. Like the test budgets, right? They're doing 25K test budgets. I mean, test budgets are gone, and I think we see that too. It's like, I got to get out there, I mean, that's where you see the traditional brands like a CPG, Procter & Gamble, they are very cautious. And now it's like, look, we have to go there. I mean, this is where our consumers are. And if we don't do it, we're going to pay the consequences for it.
Okay, so I think we've done a nice job painting the landscape and doing some major issues. What about questions from the audience? What would you like to ask this panel? Let's start over here. Go ahead. Microphone coming right up to you. Well, maybe not. Go ahead.
Seems like a lot of the money being poured into the mobile world is to help new technologies and help new companies solve some of these advertising problems. But if 70% of the digital inventory right now is still not even ready for a mobile screen, what technologies are out there so that these companies, especially the long tail, can just be ready for mobile ad? I mean, something as simple as a 300 by 250 mobile banner. I mean, 70% of the inventory right now can't even take that. That'd be one question. And then the other would be, the advertisers always tell me, we don't want mobile because we can't track the pixel, and we don't want mobile because users don't buy anything from their phone. We'll take iPad.
Okay, who wants to jump in on that one?
Yeah, so so that's one of the things, the challenges that we've solved from a rich me perspective is making sure that so those sites can serve an HTML5 based creative. So that's kind of that's HTML5 is the advertising platform now for mobile, right? So Flash doesn't work in a mobile environment. So you can serve. So a lot of the ad service are now that are serving non-mobile optimized sites have a rich media creative for mobile, HTML5 based, but they also have a tag for Flash. So depending on that device recognition, they'll serve the right rich media creative. So, that's where a lot of the pubs, the kind of phone rang off the hook for us last year. It's like 40% of their inventory is mobile. It's like, man, we're not monetizing any of this. And so that's, the opportunity is like, wow, there is a tipping point now. Like they're not monetizing it. Now they can. And it's just getting them educated on like, wow, that was easy. And, we can serve an advertisement that is effective and can perform. And then, Victor can talk more about the cookieless world. I mean, so we are tracking the performance of these things. I mean, the ad creative is outperforming what you would consider a traditional rich media creative.
And your second point goes to attribution, and attribution measurement is just simply hard. The click is extraordinarily imperfect. It's something that everyone's familiar with, so we sort of grab onto it even though we know it's going to sink us. It doesn't really mean much. It's a midstream analytic that doesn't tell us much. Inevitably, and I won't answer the question, so I'll keep talking about what I won't answer you. But, and I know there's a session later today. I do think that from a campaign perspective, we're going to have to return back to some of the end stream analytic. So sort of in-store traffic, in-store sales for local, hyperlocal. That's understandable if you're running those types of campaigns. Brand lift is understandable, but maybe not at the incremental, which is how much that mobile campaign contribute. But back to Ed's point, you're going to see a lot more blended campaigns, which attribution is going to be hard to find out from each channel. And I think so I think there's work to be done, and I just encourage to avoid sort of these midstream measurements that we all know don't mean anything, but they sort of give us comfort. They give us something to report.
I would just say, I mean, I didn't want to mention attribution today just because we only had 35 minutes, and it is probably the biggest challenge in the industry. But, my opinion is that people who are basing their businesses or continue to base their businesses on last click, last impression attribution are completely effed. But you know what? They're going to make a lot of money in the short term. But that's just one problem. The other problem I would say is there are, Grant talked about device recognition, ways to identify the availability of delivery mobile. That's easy today, right? And if your partners can't do that, then you got the wrong partners. And you're sort of, that shouldn't be the challenge that we face. Monetizing that 70% of the inventory that can't accept mobile is a challenge for those publishers, and I think there's companies that are trying to solve that as well.
Okay, next question. All the way, let's start the easy one in front, and there's one in the back afterwards. So she's over here.
Amy Lipton from Cargo. So mobile's a different device, and it's really cool. It can change behavior. we're seeing mobile checkout, we're seeing mobile payment, we're seeing mobile coupons be 10 times more effective than print coupons. What advice do you have for people for what they can do? What's the most engaging and innovative ideas that are out there now?
Yeah, one I think we do a lot is one, keep it simple, right? I mean, we can it's not really much of an innovation, but it's keeping it simple. You know, we constantly try to do the battle between the creative agencies want to win the next Cannes Lions award, but you're on a mobile device, so you got to keep it short and sweet and simple, but really have it perform well. But on the innovation side, it's we're coming out with it's new formats, it's new ways for experiences to gauge. So IAB did the Rising Stars format, so you'll hear crazy things like pull and slider, peel off, adhesion. So there's innovation there on the format side. So as the moderator said earlier, it's just the little 320 by 50 screen. How do you get users to engage with it? And so I think there's innovation on the formats. And then leveraging other data, right? I mean, we're innovating with formats within, Facebook and Twitter, getting other mediums that brands can get access with. So you can do buying with premium pubs, buying through the exchanges and the networks, et cetera. And so leveraging all of that and then getting data to do really dynamic, targeted, creative based, right ad to the right user at the right time.
Anybody else? Okay, back in the corner.
Dave Winnicky.
Come on, stand up. You got, there we go.
One of the probably most far-reaching things I heard today was the idea that the value of mobile ads is shifted from delivering media to delivering utility. And that's a pretty big metaphor shift. We're talking about formats, we're talking about impressions. That sounds a lot like media. So can you say a little bit more about how we make that shift to delivering utility and what that means for advertising?
Ed,
I think it was directed at me, unfortunately.
you started it.
I'm not sure that I can answer all of that in one pithy statement, but I do think that there's an overall in the world of communications planning, marketing, advertising, however you want to describe that. I think the notion of, and I think, I will attribute this change or this volatility to ad tech, quite frankly, and specifically to RTB, and the ability to buy impression, and the ability to have a significant amount of data on each individual impression. So I think that sort of started this revolution. And it creates a tremendous amount of problems. If we think of media, and I'll jump around a couple different places here. If we think of media ultimately as content distribution, what content is valuable to a consumer today in a world of beyond hyper-fragmentation and in a world where there are literally billions of choices. So the ability to communicate with the individual on a one-to-one basis that has been brought on by ad tech needs to be responded with something more than what has historically been push communication and advertising communications planning speak. So, I mean, to me, this is about the democratization, if you will, of communications planning, and it is about truly being able to deliver customization at scale. So it is a massive change. I think you're right. I mean, I don't think it's metaphorical. I think it's quite real. And I think you will start to see and are starting to see the literature change from the advertising groups, from the communications groups, about delivering utility as opposed to delivering messages.
Any other questions? Right up here. Where's our microphone? Right here in front.
Sarah Mandino from Blitz Media. This is my first intro to the world of mobile. I'm
Welcome.
unfortunately
lot
broadcast based,
so
so,
far.
I'm trying not to become a dinosaur. My question is, yeah. You mentioned consumers not feeling like they want to buy things on phones, and they're happier with tablets. Our clients are happier spending their money on tablets because consumers are more comfortable there. What is being done to help consumers feel more comfortable buying things with their phone? I mean, you hear about it more and more, and that you can buy it with your phone and this and that, but are people doing it, and how are we going to help people get there?
Yeah, the latest stats I looked at actually don't agree with that, which I think people are increasingly buying on mobile, and that's both tablet and smartphone. It's starting from a small number, but it was a very meaningful portion of the holiday spend in 2012. I think what has to happen is not strictly from an advertising standpoint, but from a more to the point, from a fulfillment standpoint, which is, do I go into a place that the execution on the smartphone is fairly easy and optimized to a smartphone? Some of the retailers or some of the larger sort of e-tailers are doing a very wonderful job creating an environment that makes it really easy to go from point A to point B. But I think the stats are showing that actually mobile purchases are growing at a fairly fast clip right now, led by tablets, but smartphones aren't being left behind at this point in time.
I would just jump in on that, and I know that I see the eBay Wear team in the room, and I think if you look at eBay's numbers, we could all be very wealthy if we could just capitalize on the transactions eBay's doing off of mobile devices today. So I would encourage you to talk to them as to what they're doing that's working so well.
Okay, so we're down to our last 4 minutes or so. So I'm going to ask the panel to kind of wrap up with some thoughts about where do you see mobile advertising going in the next 12, 24 months? What are your forecasts?
It's going to get a lot bigger. So last year, we grew 171%, which is fine. And the forecast, and I think someone mentioned earlier, the forecast for mobile advertising keep on growing and growing. And I think that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of tailwinds driving those numbers. And I think really the largest point of reference for mobile advertising is what we're building to remove the barriers to entry. And taking advantage of technology from the standpoint of creating efficiency, creating scale, from an RTB standpoint or from a programmatic standpoint, enabling impression by impression decisioning. From the standpoint of data, which is its own currency, is to continue to encourage within the context of privacy, and I'll stop there, just put a new paragraph in, which is it's such an important thought process to have mobile advertising organically create a privacy guidelines and policing environment that works. Because if not, things will go bump in the night, and unnecessarily so. So going back to data. So I think creating the opportunity for those third-party data providers that have done very well in the online space to find an opportunity to do well in mobile, to create that technical opportunity, integration opportunity, and create it so that those buyers are able to benefit from that data. Data is such an extraordinarily important currency. We have 3 minutes. Important currency for mobile advertising. But the big thought is sort of remove your thinking about the big number and the growth numbers, which are sort of over-celebrated. Those are driven by some big tailwinds. The larger point is, are the market participants able to get value out of this space? And how do you get value out of this space? And then sort of working with the folks on this panel and others in this room, sort of how do I capitalize on mobile? What do I do? And I think that's the big shift, which is creating value in the space, not creating just simply celebrating growth in the space.
And I'll just add is that all the challenges that we talk about will be gone, right? Like this, it will, we envision, and I hope it's the case that, mobile is digital, right? I mean, it's not this, island of, yeah, we have to do mobile. You're doing mobile, and it's just the challenges and hurdles and leveraging data, all of that, is done and away with, and it's the medium now that people do for digital.
Ed, you get the last word.
Sweet. So I'm going to suggest that it's similar to what Victor said. Is what we're going to see is tremendous moving up and to the right, and then my big prediction is that it's going to be massively underreported, even up and to the right.